The last few years have been big ones for the performing arts in Winnipeg, both at home and abroad. We have, for example, a ballet company and symphony orchestra of international stature, and a regional theater second to none. But this is not the first time Winnipeggers have had direct access to the same entertainment playing the theaters and opera houses of London, Milan, and New York. There was, in fact, an earlier golden age, and it started around the end of the 19th century.
That is Scott Oak, reporting for CBC Manitoba's An Evening with the Arts. That was recorded back in March of 1981. The show covered an arts fundraising benefit and featured performances, but it also highlighted something: the long legacy of Winnipeg's arts and culture scene, which blossomed when Corliss Powers Walker came to town in 1897. Walker was a showman from Fargo. He came here to Winnipeg to manage the Bijou, an early theater on Main Street. I had to look that up, by the way. He still ran those several playhouses south of the border, as well as all along the Northern Pacific Railway route. That network became known as the Red River Valley Theatre System. It then merged with other circuits, and it gave Walker a monopoly in the western United States. That gave Winnipeg access to some of the top touring acts in showbiz. The French stage actress Sarah Bernhardt played here. And in vaudeville's heyday, the city hosted stars like Groucho Marx and Charlie Chaplin. That sets the scene for today's episode. This is Manitoba, a podcast and a province that's known for an arts and culture scene that punches above its weight. Of course, the golden age of the early 1900s, though, is long gone. And in recent years, it has not been an easy road for the arts here in Winnipeg.
The Winnipeg Symphony Orchestra is laying off staff due to the COVID-19 pandemic. More than 100 musicians, general staff, and teachers were handed layoff notices yesterday. On the advice of health officials, the organization has suspended its spring concerts and fundraisers. For more on this, we've reached Trudy Schroeder. She's the executive director of the WSO. Hello.
Hello.
How are you feeling right now about having to lay off your staff?
Well, heartbroken, really. I mean, it is something that most of us are never called to do, right? I mean, who has to lay off the entire organization, essentially, in one day? Good people, good-hearted, musicians, fine musicians. I mean, it feels to me like sort of my first casualty of this whole pandemic, and it's a deep one, that so many people would be hurt by it, because we're already all worried. And then to have this level of economic stress added onto it, it's terrible.
You knew this was sort of on the chopping block. How did you ultimately come to this decision?
Well, you know what? I don't think that we did. We came into this season, the 2019-20 season, in the best financial shape the Winnipeg Symphony Orchestra has ever been in. We had 12 years of consecutive surpluses. We had planned. We'd been working for 5 years on taking the orchestra on its very first European tour, and then this happened. So then suddenly, we had to cancel all our concerts. The concert hall is closed. Like, it's not even that we could make a concert, but even if we could get into the concert hall, audience members wouldn't come. They're advised not to go. So, right? Yep. Suddenly you have no income. You have only expenses, and our payroll every 2 weeks is $285,000. So our cash flow, once we did the cash flow, it sort of looked at it and thought, oh my goodness, this is not just going to be like a week or two. This is going to be longer. We had cash flow for one more payroll, which is going to be next Friday. And then enough for rent and to keep the website up and that kind of thing.
So it's a huge hit.
It's a huge hit.
And since then, for local arts organizations, it's been year after year of deficits ranging from hundreds of thousands of dollars to more than $1 million. So what do? Well, you make programming changes. You leave staff positions vacant even to trim costs. We heard that a lot. There have been candid appeals to audiences as well to come back, and to governments to boost funding. Then, though, finally, in October of this year, some hope. An operating surplus. I spoke with the WSO Executive Director, Angela Birdsell, about the change in fortune. She says even though the surplus is modest, it's a massive relief after more than 5 years of uncertainty.
When you consider the start of the year, we had a budget gap that was just, well, I want to say astronomical, roughly $1.5 million, close to a budget gap where we had no idea at the beginning of the year how that was going to be met. No idea.
What were the stresses through the year when you think about what it took to even stay afloat, to stay on the stage?
Well, I think because we'd been preparing for a couple of years, we knew it was coming. I think me and my team were all kind of mentally prepared to say, look, like, we're going to do the best we can every single day, but we're not going to lose sleep, because if you lose sleep, then it makes it very hard to function. So we've all learned coping mechanisms to keep ourselves even and grounded during these really scary times.
Yeah, scary is the word. So tell me a little bit about why this happened, why the pandemic was the real start of the hit, right? People just not coming back in seats.
Sure, yeah. Because our first year back in production, I think we were 60% of what our normal audiences would be. And that was pretty much the case across the country. The studies showed that was what it was going to be. The reason why this crisis didn't hit us sooner is that we did have wage and rent subsidies that helped carry us through the first couple of years, but they did run out. So the year prior to last year, we were still at roughly 60% of audiences, but last year we climbed up to, and we're still comparing to pre-pandemic times, we climbed up to 80%. So that gave us hope. But I mean, I think most folks know that arts organizations live on part government, part ticket sales, and part fundraising. And so we needed all three of those roughly equal levels of funding to keep going, or to climb rather. And so we had started our advocacy at the government level a couple of years prior. We'd started communicating very transparently to donors and ticket buyers that we needed them to come back. So all I can say is that every single one of those three streams stepped up to the plate, showed how much they loved the WSO, showed how important they knew that the arts were to community building, bringing people together, to bringing people downtown. And so really, we were so gratified to see that recovery.
When you break down those three areas that you mentioned, more people stepping up to buy tickets, how much was the increase then, year over year?
30% from the previous year.
Okay. Yep. And then private donations, you guys had a record year, right?
We had a record year. I mean, the WSO always does very, very well in terms of our individual donations, and that's gratifying because not only do people buy tickets to our concerts and many concerts throughout the year, they also write checks. They'll top up their donations. They might be small amounts or there might be large amounts. So both in the number of donors and the amounts that people gave to the WSO, that was an all-time high, a record high.
I know that you were quite open when you were talking to the Winnipeg Free Press, our journalistic colleagues here, about this. But one of the things that you said is you expressed support for the government, support for the mayor and the Manitoba Arts Council. But I wonder what the reality is, do you think? Because I know are retiring as well. You're going to be leaving the WSO. What's the reality of what kind of support and consistent support, support you can, consistent, that you can count on this, not going to be year in and year out being nervous, would you need to have your organization, maybe all arts organizations, but certainly WSO, feel confident moving forward? What's really needed to support the arts in our community?
That's such an interesting question. I've had the fortune to work federally. I've had the fortune to work in other countries, to see what goes on in other jurisdictions. I mean, there's a couple of things, but overall, I would say the very healthy, vibrant arts organizations have 50 to 60% government funded. And I would say in Canada, it's between 25 and 35% government funded. So it is a huge challenge. It's always been that way. And I've been known to say to my federal colleagues that we need a seismic increase in investment. We need to get people together in community, celebrating what we have in common as opposed to our differences, getting people off their screen and building community through the arts. And we really do need at least a doubling of investment at all three levels of government.
I don't want to pit one against the other, because people have heard me say on the airwaves before that I love everything. I love sports, I love arts, I go to the theater, all kinds of things. However, there's a reality in our community, which is the Jets. And I know that we did stories when the Jets returned, even though it's been a number of years now, talking about that, every family only has a certain amount of dollars to spend on what they're going to do for entertainment. And I know that our arts organizations also at that point saw a bit of a shift too. Is that still a challenge, sort of competing for that dollar when, of course, everything's lean out there for families? Do you lose subscribers, do you think, to the sports scene in the city?
We've certainly lost subscribers, but I'm not sure it's because of the Jets or because of sports. I think it has more to do with the younger generation. They want flexible options. They don't want to commit their time a whole year in advance. So we've seen our single tickets go way up and our subscriptions go way down. I think that's reflective of the demographic. So we're doing things like memberships. So for a monthly membership, you can come to a concert practically for free. And we're seeing some uptake on those more flexible, affordable membership models. But it all goes back to why we need government investment, so that, in some parts of the world, they have a lot of free events for people to enjoy because of the value that they bring to communities and bringing people together. So
and then the interest is there, and then somebody may, then they're going to buy a single ticket or maybe subscribe.
Right.
Because they've had a taste.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. When the pandemic hit, how long did you envision the recovery would take?
Well, the very first stats out there were 3 to 4 years. And then by 21-22, Business for the Arts and Nanos Research were saying, it's going to be more like 6 to 10 years for us to recover. And so what are we at? We're roughly at the 5-6 year mark. And we are seeing that recovery, but we've had to really reinvent what we offer and how we offer it. And so it takes time, because arts organizations plan 2 to 3 years in advance. So it takes time for us to shift and pivot and start to appeal to, the new demographic. And they're coming because once they experience it, they get so excited and they want to come back.
Another way that the WSO has pivoted is changing up the experience for audiences. So their season includes a wrestling match with orchestral accompaniment, family movie nights with a soundtrack that's performed live. Maybe you caught the Harry Potter version, or maybe you're planning to go to the iconic Bond music night. They also have a drum concerto featuring Stuart Copeland from The Police. At the beginning of the year, they also premiered a brand new format called Inside Out, which is coming back in January. CBC's Shanley Vidal got a look at how it redefines the concept of front row seats.
I am Daniel Reskin, music director of the Winnipeg Symphony Orchestra. I am in the middle, I'm elevated, and the orchestra members are not in front of me, they are all around me. And so are the audience members. They're all around me in circle, and it's not like there's orchestra first all together and then audience around it. It's practically one musician, one audience member. 2 musicians, 3 audience members. 1 musician, 4 audience members. We're all really thrown around the stage, and all the spaces between the musicians are filled by the audience members.
What is the experience that you hope the audience gets out of this?
First of all, it's an opportunity to hear the orchestra the way the musicians hear themselves on stage. Secondly, it's an opportunity to be more physically involved with the sound that musicians produce. It's also an opportunity to see the instruments the musicians are playing much closer, and to get into almost the technical things, like what is happening when oboist is taking his reed into the mouth, and how all the keys are working, how the musicians breathe when they play their string instruments, the mouthpieces go into the trombones and trumpet. They get to hear things that they normally don't hear sitting in the concert hall, because they sit so close to the instrument. They might hear more of harp or horn and less of the second violins, or less of a general sound. But it's a unique opportunity also to see what musicians are reacting to when working with a conductor. It's a unique opportunity to see how musicians react to each other on stage, because usually in a normal setup, we have an orchestra musicians on stage, then there's an invisible barrier, and kind of across the street from them, there's an audience members that are listening to the ready product. But here, everyone can get into the kitchen, into the laboratory where we actually make this happen.
I'm Alex Conway. I play flute and piccolo with the WSO, and I'm here performing with the WSO for the Inside Out performance. We haven't done anything like this before, so we're sitting a lot further apart than we usually are, which makes things a little bit more difficult to hear. But to have our audience in between us, I think, is equal parts exciting and scary. As musicians, we train to play for people who are, I'd say, at least 10 feet away, if not much, much more in this hall. So thinking about how to adjust the way we play so that it's a great experience for people both far away and up close.
What are you excited about for this performance?
I'm just really excited for the audience to have our perspective, right? To be able to feel what the musicians feel when we're on stage, to be able to see the conductor from our perspective is going to be, I think, a real treat for the audience.
It's a wonderful opportunity also to build a community around the musicians of the orchestra, because we're normally kind of, many of them are kind of nameless because they're part of a larger group. But this is an opportunity to maybe even strike a little conversation during the break or something. Not while they're playing. We have to put on the sign, don't talk to driver while driving, don't talk to musician while playing. But that's an idea. It's a very playful, very direct, very relaxed, very informal way of making music and consuming music, where everything is just about fun.
WSO isn't alone. Other arts organizations are renegotiating their relationship with audiences too. But the survival of the groups comes down to more than just entertainment. A report that came out from the Manitoba Arts Council in 2023 found that the province's arts and culture sector created $1.75 billion in economic activity. That amounts, in case you're wondering, to about 20,000 jobs. About 2/3 of the survey respondents at that time also said arts and culture are a vital part of their well-being. And more than half of them said arts and culture are essential to celebrating Manitoba's unique cultural identity. So it's not a stretch to say that the arts sector is a part of what makes our province special. But people's habits, those habits that are just ingrained, they have changed. Take Manitoba Opera, for example. They came out of COVID with about 60% of their pre-pandemic crowd sizes. They say they've had to modernize their business practice. They're leaning more heavily on things like social media to try to appeal to the younger last-minute crowd. Slowly but surely, though, they say that is working. And like the opera, the Royal Manitoba Theatre Centre is seeing some rebound as well. Artistic Director Kelly Thornton told my colleague Marjorie Dowhouse that it comes, though, after grappling with what was a harsh post-pandemic reality.
We realized we'd lost about 3,000 subscribers, so it was a grim time. Obviously that's guaranteed income that we no longer could count on. And so we had what we called the iceberg conversations, where all the senior leadership sat around and the table and had some really hard conversations around cuts, and almost every solution offered the word cut in it. Cut a show out of the main stage season, cut a week out of each run of the main stage, cut the warehouse altogether. And all of these offers were, ultimately, they were just depressing. Mm-hmm. And I also felt that our patrons had been displaced already after 2.5 years of the theatre being dark. So I really didn't want to displace them anymore. I didn't want to take their long favored seat that they'd been sitting in for 20 years. So I said, I think we need to actually grow our way out of this problem. We're going to face into the wind. And so we used our stabilization fund. We had happily put some investment into the stabilization fund over the years, and also during some of the COVID relief funding was funneled into there. So we made decisions to do a planned deficit season to bounce back, to give the audiences what they know and love about MTC, which is big, bold theater on our stages. So we gave them exactly that. We gave them, big musicals and great comedies and adventure. And over the last 5 years, we have seen them returning in droves. Mm-hmm. And the difference really is that, we lost 3,000 subscribers. We've gained back about half of that, which is a good news story. We still, use our stabilization fund in terms of investing more money into balancing a budget through the stabilization. But we are seeing a huge amount of single ticket buyers. We've increased by about 10,000 from 2019 to now. We have a huge amount of singles. So that's just a ratio difference. We have the same amount of bums and seats, as we call it in theater.
Yeah.
But yeah, the number is, it's not all guaranteed income the way that the subscription base was.
I want to talk about, because you touched on this, about giving people productions that they know, big musical productions. One of those calculated risks was Elf, the musical, which is coming soon. And I hear it's an expensive production. Tell me about the risk that you're taking with this and how you're hoping it's going to pay off.
Yeah, I mean, Elf is probably the biggest musical we've ever put on the stage. It's huge. It's got just the chorus of kids alone is 10. So it's a giant musical with huge production values. It's a big tap show. If you don't know, everyone knows and loves the movie, but the musical is kind of a golden age musical in many ways. They really drew on that big band sound. So there's big, huge tap numbers. And obviously ridiculous fun. So it's a large cast with a big orchestra, and we decided to do it because we knew that Winnipeg would embrace it and love it. And the sales, the single ticket sales, the target is higher than we've ever had in terms of a musical, almost double what we usually budget for a musical in terms of our revenue targets. And we're well on track. And it's selling like hotcakes. So anybody out there who's listening and is like, "Oh, I should see Elf," you better get a ticket soon. We've extended also. So we were going to extend up until Christmas, and then the ticket sales are just so hot that we've made the decision to actually extend past Christmas. So it goes to the 28th of December. We usually front end our season with the big titles, and then we put some of the challenging kind of contemporary shows from the international canon on the stage in the back end of the season. But that front end of the season, you see those 15-person shows, 20 people on stage, and big sets, and it's extraordinary. I mean, I think people have literally grown up watching those big shows on the stage. The idea of facing into the wind and really looking at what we're here to do and what our mandate and mission is for all Manitobans has kind of returned us to stability in the end. It was a hard time going through those dark years where we had to shutter, and then to come back and see that we were missing people in our audiences, and then slowly to see them come back has been really, really rewarding for all of us.
Inflation, of course, you talked about making tough decisions, having tough conversations, people, of course, having those tough conversations about what to spend their money on. How has that been impacting MTC when it comes to inflation? I mean, because obviously you're paying more for productions, and the people also having to figure out what they're going to buy for and pay for.
Yeah, it is. It's shocking sometimes when you think the prices, the increase in prices. For instance, paint. We paint our sets. We paint all of our sets. Paint has gone up 30%. And, you can't raise your ticket price by 30% out of the gate. So that kind of increase in expenses, that's the question mark for us right now is that, can our growth meet the growth in expenses? So that's the ongoing challenge. I mean, when the Fringe Festival, which MTC also produces the Winnipeg Fringe Festival, the first year back, I think porta potties were double the price. So, every industry has increased their prices, and of course, that's inflation, and that's the nature of where we are. But we have to just keep doing what we do best and drawing in audiences and increasing single tickets too, because I think the single tickets balance out the subscriptions.
Well, that's a wrap for this week's This is Manitoba, hosted by me, Marcy Marcusa. If you're new to the show and you haven't followed us yet, please take some time to do that wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you know someone who loves to know what's happening in our province, they're our people. So tell them about us too. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week with a new episode.